Good evening, welcome to A Foreigner in the Philippines. Title for tonight, How to Avoid Becoming a Victim in a Relationship in the Philippines. Unfortunately, while it's not a common story, it's a story that does get a lot of attention. Now, the most recent was that I was told about was a German gentleman who came over with money and the ability to support himself on what was obviously his capital. He, I think, married a Filipina, and during the ensuing months, maybe years, I didn't actually read the article myself, Beth told me about it, and apparently she relieved him of the money and then she relieved him of her company. So now apparently he is collecting trash and doing recycling to survive. I find that a little bit surprising that anybody would end up doing that. I've looked at people who beg for a living, and you'll find them, especially when I was in California, I would find that there were very professional beggars who would come up to you and very politely say, do you have some spare change, sir, that you could help me with? And then if you said no, they would say thank you, and they would go on to the next person. In fact, no matter how close the next person was to where you were standing, without any shame at all, they'd go on to the next one. That's because they're realizing that anything that you do is really down to numbers. If you could, let's enter into the fantasy realm for a moment. You get a phone call and it's for real, it's from God. And God tells you, look, I know you've had a rough time, so I'm going to make you a promise. If you will choose what you really want to do and do it, I will guarantee that you cannot fail. And all that you had to do was go and do the numbers. And so God would have told you, no matter how many times you are turned down, eventually you will succeed. Or another spin on that was, if you knew absolutely that in making, say, 3,000 calls, you would actually eventually have huge success. Boy, you'd sit down with a pen and you'd tick those numbers off and you'd make the calls, and you wouldn't care how many times that you were rejected, because you would know, in our little scenario, you'd know that you were 3,000 calls, you were going to succeed. So you'd be able to do that because it would be a finite number, and you would know that that's all that you had to do, the numbers game. That's what the guy that came up to me when I was with my son outside a supermarket in North Hollywood and said to me, sir, do you have $1 or $2 that you could let me have? And I said, no, I don't. And he said, okay, thank you. And then a lady was coming up very, very close. He had no shame. He just went up to her and said, excuse me, ma'am, could you spare $1 or so? And he did that in pure numbers. He knew that all he had to do was keep asking, and he would make money. And that was how he did it. So persistence was really what we were talking about. Now, how does this relate to becoming a victim? Well, sorry, there's plenty of bugs around tonight for some reason. If you are in a situation where up ahead, if we were looking in a crystal ball, we're really going into fantasy tonight, I know, but if you were looking in a crystal ball, you could see the future, and you could see that coming up was a situation where you were going to be a victim, you would change your behavior right now so that that didn't happen. And how would you do that? Well, assuming that you could look into this crystal ball for details, you would be able to see the different steps that you took that led you to that situation where you were going to be a victim. Well, in actual fact, it's not quite as clear as a crystal ball, but it is as definite as that the steps that you take are what will take you eventually into the future, where the future becomes the present. So how do you not take those steps which will take you into a victim situation? It's not about choosing the one. It's not about choosing the one that you choose in order to be with, that in our crystal ball setting is going to make you the victim because you're going to run off with your money and leave you broke. It's not about that. It's about how you allow yourself to become in that situation, that you would make those decisions which would take you there. So I say that you have to do the work on yourself. Well, when people talk about breaking up and how their partner left them, it's very common to hear them say, it came completely out of the blue. I was so surprised. I came home one night and there she is, or there he is, sitting with a suitcase that he's already packed and ready to say goodbye. And I was completely shocked. Well, this is not actually true, I don't believe. If you sit that person down and get them to look at an imaginary screen on the wall, where if their name, let's say that their name is Harry and Helen. Harry and Helen, the story of Harry and Helen. So you sit Harry down or you sit Helen down and you say, okay, can we look at let's look at the movie of you two. So they would start off and say, well, and in one particular case, an imaginary scenario, they quite possibly could say that Helen would say, well, I was at this party and I was by myself and I saw this guy and he turned out to be Harry, and I really liked him. He was good looking and I saw him smile a lot and he had a very pleasant smile and he seemed very personal, and then he came over and talked to me and we had a very pleasant conversation. So what you would do with this person is you would say, I want you to look at the movie and then in retrospect, because this is somebody that's already told you, I was so surprised that they just suddenly decided to leave. Now you're going to ask them to look, and you're going to ask them to look in a different kind of way. You're going to say, so take us through the movie, watch the movie, and when you see something in retro that causes you to think, tell us. So she starts off, I saw Harry and he was very personable and all of that, and he was with this girl. Wait a minute, he was with a girl. So, well, what happened there? Well, when I said to him, aren't you with somebody? He said, actually, no, I'm not. I used to go out with that girl, but and she's having trouble moving on. So she asked me to just come to the party with her. You know, that was all. So she didn't have to arrive alone. So you say, how does that feel, Helen? And she says, well, you know what? It didn't feel so good at the time, but I didn't want to spoil things because I liked him. So they continue to talk, and then he says, well, he sees that this lady that he came with is beckoning to him, and he says, sorry, excuse me, I just got to go and find out if she's okay. And you think, well, what a caring guy, but you don't actually like it. Well, then he comes back and he says, you know, look, do you think I could have your phone number, because I've actually got to go now? Well, and then you say, well, I thought that you were not actually with her and you only just arrived. Well, yes, but she's actually a little bit brought down, and she's had another disappointment, so I'd just like to make sure that she's going to be okay for getting home. You see what I mean? Is so back again. So you can see that even when you play things back in retrospect, you can see more clearly how you ignored flags, red flags, that should have made you say, no, this is not enough. This is not enough for me. I deserve more than this. So in that particular case, what should Helen have done? Well, Helen eventually ended up, shall we say, in something of a three-ring circus, because the guy Harry never quite gave up his girlfriend, and on a birthday, when it should have been a birthday party for Helen, he rang up and said, look, I'm sorry, I can't go, but she's called me and she's in a terrible state and I'm just afraid that she might do something silly. Eventually, of course, he went back to that person because he'd never really left. So Helen really was not surprised. She had suspected that that might happen. She feared that that might happen. And she chose to ignore all of those red flags. Now, if a man comes to the Philippines, because it seems to be the guys that come here, and these are the ones that we hear about. We hear how they came and they met someone who was drop dead gorgeous. And then you start asking them, well, what kind of drop dead gorgeous? Well, she had really short skirts on and she had fabulous legs, and even showed a little cleavage, which I thought was unusual. You thought that was unusual? Why was that? Well, it seemed that she was a little bit attracting attention, you know, and I actually felt that I was in competition when I was with her, because she seemed to be interested in looking at other guys. And then it begs the question, how did you feel about that? Was that something that you were in agreement with? Well, no, it wasn't actually, because I don't want to be in competition with a load of other guys. So what do you think should have happened in order to not have that sense of competition? Well, I think that if she had not dressed in such a sexy way, to have been more conservative, that probably wouldn't have happened. So what you see is, a scenario where the man is entering into a relationship with someone that actually he is out of agreement with. He's not in agreement with the way that she dresses, the way that she conducts herself, the way that she appears to be a little bit flirty, but says, I'm just being friendly. I'm friendly with everybody, you know, and that will only increase, and all of those little red flags will continually keep popping up. Now, if you allow them headspace, then you are going to end up as a victim. So what does it say about entering into a relationship in which you are going to end up a victim? It means that you haven't done your preparatory work. You need to prepare for a relationship. If you have had a relationship in which you've suffered and been a victim, then you're in a very good position for adopting lessons taken from your past, in which you maintain a degree of, let's say, setting some kind of boundary as to what kind of behavior you will consider is acceptable. Well, how is your behavior? Do you flirt? Do you wear clothes which are likely to attract the attention of everybody? If so, why would you not want it in the woman that you are searching with or have found? It's going to happen. Now, if that happens and you're not able to take it, but in order to keep this very beautiful woman, then you are having to look back again at what your mindset is. Now, if you think that this woman is too beautiful for you, why would you think that? Because beauty is not, it's not the be and end all any more than money is the be and end all. So you have to ask yourself, what is it about myself that considers that someone else is too good for me? And it gets back to self-esteem. As soon as it gets back to self-esteem, you have to ask yourself, where does that come from? Self-esteem is one of those attributes of human character and behavior, which is the ever watchful eye, the internal ever watchful eye of everything that you do. Now, if you remember the Pinocchio story, he didn't have any personal sense of right and wrong. So the good fairy what shall we say, gave him a conscience in the form of Jiminy Cricket. And Jiminy Cricket was there so that he would be able to say, Pinocchio, you shouldn't be doing this. This is your conscience speaking. You shouldn't be doing this. And then, if Pinocchio had had any sense, he would have listened and he would have altered his behavior. Well, we all have a Jiminy Cricket internally, and that Jiminy Cricket makes assessments of what our behavior is like. You cannot hide from yourself. You can hide from everybody else, but you cannot hide from yourself. And the self that you cannot hide from is the ever-conscious self. It's not, there is, in a way, it's the what we call the subconscious, and yet it's the only really totally, continuously conscious mind that there is. And it's watching you all the time. You are watching yourself. And if you are behaving badly, there is no one that you can hide. You can hide that from everybody but yourself. So this is kind of like a behavioral measure, a meter by which you are being gauged. And if your mental Jiminy Cricket watches you cheat, watches you lie, watches you misbehave and betray, then it automatically adjusts your self-esteem. And then, as soon as you start self-adjusting, then it is, in a way, assuming that, say, man or woman is innately good, then in a way they will seek to protect the people that they associate with and make sure that they associate with people who deserve no better than them. In other words, deserve no better than to be lied to, betrayed and cheated. And why do they not deserve that? Well, they don't deserve it because the person knows he doesn't deserve it. And it's a measure of protection that he seeks only to go with those people who don't deserve any better than him. Because if he goes with somebody that's good, he will eventually betray them, and he'll know that. So you need to be really working on yourself and on your sense of being, a sense of self-worth. The only way that you can do that is by behaving according to a sense of integrity, where you know the right from wrong. So there's those three things. The person who is moral, and knows right from wrong and behaves in a moral way. In other words, he behaves with a sense of right and wrong and with integrity. And he doesn't go around lying and cheating and betraying people. And then you have immoral, and you have the act of being immoral. When you act immoral, you actually know what is right and wrong, but you choose, for reasons best known to yourself, you choose to behave badly, to behave immorally, and to do whatever it is that you wish that suits you at the time. You are an immoral person. And then you have amoral. Amoral is the Al Capone of the morality gauge. Al Capone didn't know right from wrong. That's amoral. That's where you simply don't know. You're not aware that you're doing anything wrong. When you rob someone, you're not taking their money, you're taking your money. Criminals have actually gone up before the bench and said, when they were asked, why did you hit the person, why did you assault the person, they say, he wouldn't give me my money. You see, he doesn't know right from wrong. So, you have to get yourself up the ladder to the point where you are a moral person, where you have integrity, where you know what is right from wrong. Now, if you know what is right, if you know right from wrong, and you are able to behave with integrity, in other words, you are a truthful person, you are dependable, you are not a betrayer, you will be loyal and true, then you will know that you can demand that of someone else. So if you've done the work on yourself, got yourself up to the point where you have full integrity, you can then demand that that is what you want from this partner that you are accepting. So if you were Helen in our little scenario, and you see the person and they're with somebody and they come over and start talking to you, the red flag is going up, and you're going to say, aren't you with that person over there? And then you will not accept the first answer that they give. They say, well, no, I'm not really there, but you came with her, yes? Yes, I do. So are they a friend? And you would be able, because you have a sense of self-worth, you will be able to demand, without it sounding, well, wait a minute, I want to know this and I want to know that. But you could ask reasonable questions. So are you still involved with that person? Can you leave her if you decide to come and stay with and talk to me? Will she be totally okay with that, or are you expected to? You would ask the questions. In other words, you would, by having a sense of your own self-worth, because you've worked on it, you would expect that you would be treated with honesty, with loyalty, and with truth, and you would not allow yourself to become a victim. Hope that clears up a little. This is a foreigner in the Philippines. You can do the work on yourself in order to not be a victim to someone else. Bye for now.